Autodesk Inventor. We're going to work with a Revolve command. Let's take a look at the file that we're going to be producing. We've got a shaft. Shaft has threads on both ends, and we've got a few different diameters. We've got a 1/2 inch diameter here. It's a 3/4 inch diameter here, another 1/2 inch diameter, and then we've got one that is 5/8 of an inch. Got our thread callouts, and if you notice, the threads do not go the full length of the shaft here on that end, so we're going to make sure that they don't go too long. Same thing here, they don't completely go to the end of that shaft. And then here's a picture that is probably a little more complicated to look at and see what's going on, but there's our large diameter of the shaft. Then we've got our different lengths here. Well, let's go ahead and start out by making this, and the dimension that I want to take care of and look at first is this one right here, the 4.5 inches. 4.5 inches. All right, let's go over to Inventor and get busy. Click on New, double click on Standard Part. On this one, I'm going to do a sketch and go off of the XY axis and do a line command. Take my line command. Now, remember that long dimension was 4.5 inches. I recommend that whenever you do a revolve, you always draw in your longest portion first. So longest portion being 4.5 inches. That's my overall length of the shaft. If I do this, it's going to make it a lot easier later. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do what I call a basic cartoon. So I go, here's this part, I've got this, it comes down here like this, comes up here, and I'm putting no dimensions on anything. I'm just making a basic cartoon sketch of this. And then I come over here, and then I connect this. Now remember, we talked earlier about things being closed. It's really important that our shape is closed. And so that's what we're working on right now. I've got to make sure that this is closed in this corner and this is closed in. That's more important than any of these dimensions right now. I'm going to zoom in there and look at this and see, definitely, I can see that those lines are closed in. Okay, I'm going to go over here to my command. This is one that I turned on. It's called a previous zoom. You can see the hotkey there for it is, I believe, is F5. There we go, shows F5. We'll do previous zoom also. All right, so I have my basic shape here. The dimensions are wrong though. So I'm going to go back over to my drawing, and what I'm going to do is set my lengths on this, on these different parts, and get that set up first. So let's go and look at the drawing here. Pull the drawing up. 1 inch, 2 3/4, and then 5/8 of an inch. All right, let's go over and see if I can remember that. This one was 1 inch. Put that in there. Put this one in here at 2.75. And then this last one here at 0.625. That forces this last piece to be the right size. That's one of the nice things about doing this forced dimension across the bottom. If I know my overall length, it helps me to put this together. Okay, finished with those. I'm right clicking so that I can hit OK and get out of the dimension command. Now, when we do a revolve, what we're actually going to do is build a profile of what we're going to revolve, and it's only going to be half the diameter, which the correct term for that is the radius. So everything here that I do is going to be based on the radius for all these different dimensions. This is my center line, and what we're going to do is we're going to revolve. We're going to sweep it around that line right there. So let's look back at our drawing here. Hopefully that makes sense. I've got a 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch, 1/2 inch, and 5/8. So let's go. Those are my diameters. So remember, we're going to do radius. So I go from here to here is you remember that one? That one was going to be a 1/2 inch, right? So if I go 0.5 divided by 2, whoops, there we go. If I go 0.5 divided by 2, that will give me my radius. If I go from this point to this point, click in there, I want this to be 3/4 of an inch, so I go 0.75 divided by 2. Again, this is going to give me my radius, and then this one here is going to be 0.5 divided by 2. Enter that, and then I go from here to here. This one is going to be 0.625 divided by 2. Now I could have calculated those out with a calculator or in my head and come up with those radiuses, but why not just use the power of what we have right there in those dimensions? I click OK, tell it to zoom so it fits it all in there. Now, we've done the primitives with boxes and cylinders. We've done extrude. This one is revolve. Now this one, just like I was telling you in SolidWorks, we have a revolve join and we have a revolve cut. In SolidWorks, they're 2 different buttons. In Inventor, it's 1 button, and over here is where we would ask for those different cuts or joins. All right, the profile is already selected for us. It's the only profile, and we're going to ask it to rotate it the full 360 degrees around. So this is all a good sign when it's highlighted like this, because it definitely shows us that we're closed. Now, the next thing we look at is our radius. We're going to rotate this around the center of that line. We're going to sweep it around that line. So I have to select which line I want to sweep it around. I could choose this line, or I could say cancel, and watch this. This is another one. I could say choose my axis. I could make my axis this one. So whatever line I choose to sweep it around, that is going to be where it starts building my object from, or sweeping around there. So there's 360 degrees. I could go in here and tell it to do an angle of 45 degrees. And there it's doing a preview. So I have some control over this. I'm going to go back and tell it to do a full revolve. So there we go. Pretty simple, right? The biggest trick is starting out with that first largest dimension first, and then build the cartoon. Don't try and do it dimensionally first. You'll actually struggle with it. And if you want to struggle with it, you can do it your own way and do it. One with just driving it with the dimensions. All right. Now I'm going to go in and thread this. If I look here, here's my command for threading. It says select the face, and I'm in the display mode, so it will display that. And what's really important to make your life easy is, because these are not the full length of the shaft, I'm going to uncheck full length, and then I'm going to put in on the end here that we see first. If we remember, though it was 9/16 of an inch long on these threads, so I'm going to go 9/16 in here. Select my face command, and I'm going to say on this face I want those threads. There we go. See how easy that was? Tell it to apply that. To make this one easier, I'm going to go up here to the cube. I'm going to click on this corner, get it to spin around this direction. These threads were a little bit longer. Those were 3/4 of an inch long. So I can type it in fractionally, or I could type in the decimal. Click on the face icon there. Click on the shaft and tell it to apply those. There we go. Pretty quick, pretty fast, pretty painless. It's a lot more time to actually machine it, though, than to build it. All right. So there we go. That was doing a revolve.